Before we begin, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Um, quick couple notes. We are going to keep you on mute so we can minimize the background noise. If you have any questions while the professor is presenting, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll be monitoring it as we go. That said, for the most part, we want to try to minimize the I'm sorry, I've just got a call and I didn't mean to do that. Um, we want to hold the Q&A to a solid Q&A at the end of everything. Tonight's program is about the climate concern and our climate clarity. And we're living in a moment where the headlines can feel overwhelming, the policy landscape is complicated, and it's easy to wonder what actually moves the needle. Which solutions matter most, and how do different choices interact to shape outcomes at the scale and the speed that science demands. That's why we're excited to have Abby Burke with us this evening. Abby is with UCSD, and she'll be guiding us through the inroads. What it is, it's a powerful interactive climate solutions model. What's especially useful about inroads is that it's not just a set of slides or a single scenario. It's a tool you can use to really test in real time. It helps us explore how different actions and policy choices affect global emissions and temperatures outcomes, and it makes the trade-offs and synergies much easier to see. For Sierra Club members and supporters, this is exactly the kind of shared foundation we need because our advocacy is strongest when it's informed, focused, and grounded in evidence. Whether you're working on clean energy, transportation, building, land use, or broader policy, this kind of modeling helps connect the dots between what we push for and what the outcomes we're fighting to achieve. Professor Burke, thank you for being with us tonight and for sharing your time and expertise with Sierra Club community. We really, really, really appreciate it. And the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks to you all for being here and having a genuine interest in this climate solution. I was telling Mark, well, we're going to talk through the En-ROADS simulator, but it was clearly designed by climate scientists, not marketing. It doesn't have a catchy name or a catchy slogan, but I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy and appreciate what it has to offer. So I'm going to go ahead and share some slides just to do an overview of the simulator. And then within a few minutes, we're going to be working in it. You're going to have the opportunity to actually start playing around and explore just what the simulator has. So you're going to be involved with it very shortly. But let me pull up my intro slides. And if you can let me know if that you guys can all see that. Yep. All right. Thank you. Okay. So yes, here we are modeling the future, trying to figure out what actions will have an impact on climate. This tool's been around for about 5 years, and I've been able to use it in both my undergraduate and graduate classes, and it's fun to see how people really grasp onto the simulator tool and what it offers. But I do have to share that it is such a treat to be presenting to you today because I have an audience that understands climate change and believes in climate change. And that is a treat because the whole first part of the presentation often goes through the science of it, but I can assume that you guys have that understanding, and that's a great starting point. And of course, the irony when we're talking about climate change and global warming is our friends across the nation are caught up in a deep freeze. It looks pretty powerful, the ice and the snow. But we know this is not a contradiction of climate change, right? This is not a data point that counters what we're working towards. And even the biggest deniers recognize that this warming world is changing. And hence, there's been so much conversation around Greenland. So, despite what the statements may be, the interest in Greenland stems from a warming world.
Mhm.
So, we know there's definitely the problem is there, but how, like Mark told us, how do we begin to make solutions? How do we begin to decide what actions to focus on? And I'm just going to throw out some of the most common ones that people put forth, right? And we'll start with electric vehicles. I'm sure many of you drive EVs. I know I love my EV. right? For convenience, it's a great consumer proposition. And I'm sure you've seen the headlines that EV sales are booming everywhere except for one place. No surprise. Where's that one place? Of course, that would be the United States. But in Europe alone, just this past year was the first time they've had fully electric vehicle sales exceed that of gas. So despite what the slowdown in the US, this continues to expand at scale. So are EVs a meaningful solution to climate change? Lots of debate and questions there. How about solar panels? I'm guessing many of you have solar, you've invested in solar. Certainly, we have the sunshine in San Diego. And again, rapid growth. Last year, China installed over 300 gigawatts of solar, dwarfing the US installations. So we're certainly seeing the investment. Is this also a meaningful solution to climate change?
Yes.
Great, right? And we're going to model this out because some people will give you all kinds of reasons back and forth, right? So, yes, we've got EVs, we've got solar. How about planting trees? Oh, everybody loves trees, right? They're beautiful, biodiversity, they cool temperatures. Are these massive tree planting schemes? Is this going to impact climate change? Or I know in San Diego or in California, we're all used to composting our food waste. I'm sure this crowd is very comfortable with it, but you may have the cranky neighbor I have that loves to complain about composting food, but we know it's continuing to roll out. More cities and states are looking to composting. So is that a meaningful solution to climate change? Do we do all of these? Where do we put our efforts? Where do we put our resources? That's the questions people are asking. How much is this going to cost? How much of an impact is it going to have? How do we prioritize our money, our time, and our resources? That is the role of the En-ROADS Climate Simulator. This simulator takes all these different actions that we just talked about, plus some, and uses a very complex data-driven back end to tell you what are the impacts of those actions. Now, this simulator originated out of MIT. Climate Interactive is a nonprofit think tank in the climate space that has developed the back end of the simulator in combination with the MIT Sloan School, which is important to understand that that's their business school. So this simulator takes both science and the business perspective to build this En-ROADS simulator. Now, they didn't come up with the data models. Instead, this simulator builds on a plethora of existing global data sources. Obviously, a lot of the reports we're familiar with out of the UN, UK Met Office, we have NOAA and NASA. The data that we trust will still be available. This simulator takes these data sources, puts them through some complex equations of the multitude of thousands of equations to give us results. Now, En-ROADS is based on policy, not pledges. So if some organization is claiming to be net zero, it doesn't factor that in unless they actually have the policies in place to get to net zero. So this is not aspirational. This is based on what organizations and countries are currently working towards. En-ROADS is accessible. All you need is a web-based. It's science-driven. It's updated frequently. Mid-January was the most recent update as data sources are updated. It's very flexible. We'll see you can use it in lots of different ways. It's transparent in terms of the assumptions behind. We're going to see it provides fast solutions, and it's free. Everybody loves free, right? We can scale free. We can give it to more people if it's free. Notice I didn't say it was pretty. So functionality over aesthetics, but I'm going to give you a screenshot of here's what the simulator looks like. I get it. Lots of numbers, graphs, modules, text. You're going to become experts at how to actually use the simulator. I'll tell you at first that it's divided into two halves. So we see the top half is where we're focused on the outcomes, right? And this default here looks at greenhouse gas emissions, sources of energy, and temperature. And let me just draw your attention to the temperature piece, because this shows you the baseline based on current policies on a global scale. We're looking to reach 3.3 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. the alarm bells are probably going off because we know that's a problematic number. And certainly when you compare it with our Paris Climate Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius, we see 3.3 is a very different trajectory. And for those of you, myself included, who have the Celsius Fahrenheit adjustment, you'll see the numbers there. Now, this is one of the main impacts. Now, temperature means something to me. I like to look and see how different actions impact temperature, but En-ROADS gives you some flexibility. Under the graphs function, you can choose to look at different impacts. And you can see here, there's a whole list of them. If you're not so interested in temperature change, you can look at CO2 concentration. Maybe some of you check the carbon, I think it's at 428 parts per million today. Maybe you want to look at how many extreme heat days we have. Maybe you want to look at air pollution, crop yields, sea level rise. En-ROADS lets you pick the outcomes that you're most interested in. So if you're willing, I was hoping you would look through this list of impacts here, and in the chat, let me know which of the impacts you see here are most impactful and meaningful for you. Which impacts would you want to see your actions influence?
Hmm. Do you want us to just put it in the chat then?
Yeah, go ahead and put it in the Zoom chat, because the idea is different impacts mean different things to different people. Right? Somebody's looking at extreme heat. I appreciate that. Ocean acidification, of course. Yeah, sea level rise. Okay. Excellent. So you're going to use the tool in the way that's meaningful for you. And I'm going to show you some of the common impacts that people look for, right? So I love sea level rise, right? San Diego, some of you may be coastal, thinking about what are the long-term impacts of sea level rise. If you select the sea level rise, you're going to see our current baseline, right? Heading towards 2.3 feet. Now, for some of you, this may be hard to visualize. You can also choose a map as your impact. So here, if you look at what are the impacts on sea level rise specific to the downtown San Diego region, you can see those purple areas show you land at risk. Even if you don't live in that region, you probably see some areas that would be concerning, like the airport. Downtown, you can see parts of the 8 freeway. Yeah, great comments there, right? So sea level rise, if this is meaningful for you, En-ROADS lets you visualize both on a numerical graph, but also on a map. And this map will give you anywhere in the globe you want to pick, right? You're going to have, some of you may start to have oceanfront property here, whether or not that was intended. Some other impacts, I see somebody talked about extreme heat. We see the baseline scenario is showing us the likelihood of extreme heat days going forward, right? Currently, there's a high likelihood of 29 years out of the 50 years having extreme heat events that we know have serious repercussions for health in our environment. Sometimes people are looking at biodiversity. What are the impacts of species? And you can see today species are losing about 3% of their climate range. And you can see for certainly look at insects, what we're so dependent on for pollination for our food supply. And we're looking at a future of 50% reduction, right? So you see how En-ROADS really can incorporate all these different elements, right? There's usually somebody, I teach in the business school, there's usually somebody that wants to ask about financial consequences, right? And here we see GDP per capita on a continuum. But what you'll see here is that we lose the potential for additional GDP. We lose the potential for economic growth from this temperature warming. Yikes. So those are the impacts, and I'm going to show you shortly how you can select those impacts when you run your model, right? But I'm going to give you a quick overview of the bottom of the model, which shows you 19 different actions that you can take to see how they influence the outcomes that we just reviewed. So each of these dots and sliders represents an action. They're all preset at the status quo, which is what is current policy. And you're going to have the option to either increase the status quo or decrease the status quo. That could be increasing the tax, decreasing the tax, increasing a subsidy, decreasing a subsidy. So I'm going to ask you to engage in the chat again and looking at these 19 different areas of action based on just a name, a title here without any detail, but which one of these actions do you think will have the single greatest impact on reducing temperature? And I'm going to ask you in the chat to pick one of these 19 and tell me which one do you think is going to have the greatest impact. They're all important. Which one do we want to prioritize? Oh, great insights. Population. Oh, you went with the hard one to start. Deforestation. Nature-based. Excellent. CO2 removal. All good ideas. Yeah. All right. I'm actually going to go into the model, the simulator, and start showing you how we're going to input these variables. Let me go over to the En-ROADS simulator.
Dun,
All
dun,
right.
dun.
Let's start with nature-based. I love that somebody looked at these nature-based solutions. And if you look at my cursor, you can see that's up here under carbon dioxide removal. The status quo, let's say we're going to prioritize nature-based. This is planting trees. This is soil sequestration. This is using nature to reduce the carbon.
I
We'd
think
start at the status quo. I'm going to use the slider and move it up from low growth to medium growth to high growth. We rapidly scale nature-based solutions. Did you guys see what happened to
excuse
temperature?
me. I think you need to reshare your screen. I still see the slide.
Yeah, we're just seeing the
All
potential
right.
areas of action.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for telling me that. All right, let me see. Whoops, let me see if I'm going to stop my reshare,
There you go.
and let's see if it lets me do my whole desktop. That's a really important variable, isn't it?
I've got everything turned, I think, so it should.
Okay, did that work?
We can see we've got your top of your desktop, but nothing of the actual
Okay, let's make sure we fix that. Let's make sure we fix that. Share. Does
okay,
that
so
work?
we can see this is the two section. Oh, yeah. I think you moved the nature base. Yes, we definitely see you're at that portion now. So
Excellent. Okay. All right.
we'd love
Let
to
me
see
go
that.
back and undo that one. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
All right. So this is the default. Thank you guys for helping me that one before I got too far. Right. So this is the default. So somebody suggested nature-based. So if I go over here to carbon dioxide removal, you'll see nature-based status quo. Let's move it all the way up. We're going to go double down on carbon dioxide removal through nature-based solutions. Did we see the impact on temperature?
Not much.
Yeah. This little button up here lets you replay it. I'm going to show you. If you take it away, you bring it back. Take it away. Does it 3 times.
Wow.
Yikes. We're going to plant a trillion
I don't
trees,
know. 2/10 of a degree is not significant.
right?
No.
It's meaningful, but we're trying to get to 1.5. Yeah. All right. So no carbon dioxide removal, nature-based solutions, super compelling, right? You're going to see this little navigation here. If I'm going to reset, I'm going to take it away so we go back, right? Let's try something else. I'm looking what else we have over here. Plant more trees. That was nature-based. Ooh, look at Doris wants to reduce economic growth. Good thing you're not running for office. Economic growth, right? This could be one. So I'm going to go down here. If we look at economic growth, we have the status quo. If we're going to reduce the growth to low growth, let's replay and see what kind of impact that one has.
Still not that much.
Still not that much, right? But I want to show you one other tool that you might be interested in. Under each of these, you'll see these little 3 dots. It's an assumption. So let's click on these three dots, right? And this, we said low growth, right, was 0.8% a year. When you grow up to the status quo, it was 1.5, okay? So you can change these assumptions. This is the transparency behind En-ROADS. You can say, well, I think it's going to be, we're going to have 4% growth a year, right? Or you can say we're going to have 0.5. You can change the assumptions behind each of these actions, okay? So there we go. We got with cutting back economic growth, right? We see that means a lot of less energy was consumed, right? And we saw a decrease in temperature, but clearly that's not the one variable that can get us there.
Electrification.
Ah, electrification. I love it. Electrification of what? Buildings and industry or transportation?
Transport first.
Perfect. We said we love those EVs, right? So let's go transport. Ready? We're starting at 3.3. Let's take the status quo on a global scale and let's subsidize the heck out of EVs. Let's go all the way over here.
It
What
didn't
happened?
change anything.
It didn't
It
happen.
didn't change anything.
Let me replay it. What happened? What
Nothing.
impact did it have on temperature?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? And this is the crux of the model is no one action happens in isolation. So we know EVs produce less emissions, right? But we need to do this in combination with some other steps, right? Let me show you what the assumption is behind this. This is subsidizing 50% of the cost, right? That's a massive subsidy, and it still didn't move the needle. So if we want to make electrification have an impact on temperature, we need to go over here and we need to say, in addition to subsidizing, we need to start taxing oil.
Mm.
We need to increase a carbon price. Okay. We need to make more cars more efficient. And now we start to see where the combination of actions is where you have meaningful outcomes. Right? So EVs are a great solution, but we need to invest, promote renewables, and tax the alternative. Right? So no one single action is enough. But right here with this combination, we got down significantly from a 3.3 to 2.5. All right, I'm going to reset those policy assumptions. And at this point, I didn't like that one. Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to give you guys the option to go into En-ROADS yourself. So hopefully you can pull up another browser. So don't close your Zoom. Pull up another tab and you go to n-roads.org, click the option to explore the simulator. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to play with those 19 different sliders. Move them up, move them down. You can reset it if you want to get rid of them. Let's see if we can just identify 3 of your top actions. And then in a couple minutes, once you have your top actions, I'm going to ask you what temperature reduction you achieved. So go ahead and visit the En-ROADS simulator.
enroads.org.
enroads.org, en-roads.org.
Ah.
If you're having any issues with it, I will put the link in the chat. I'm going to go reset mine. All right, so I'm going to start the timer here. Play around with the 19 variables and find your top 3.
Could you send an email? Because I'm actually looking at a different screen.
Yeah, I put the link directly in the Zoom chat.
Yeah, I don't do the Zoom chat. It doesn't work on an iPad.
All right. I don't know, Mark, are you
I'll
able to
send it to
now?
you. Yep, I'll
Okay,
send it to you right now, Peter.
great. Thanks.
Just send it to you, Peter.
All right.
Again, you're looking for your combination of three actions, since we know no single action got us to where we needed to be.
Hmm. 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 Interesting.
All right, we're not going to get perfection. Maybe another minute to come up with your a scenario where you select your top three actions. Ah, well done, John. You got to 2 degrees. Yeah, when you have your top three, I'll ask you to go ahead and put what level of warming were you able to reduce to? All right, 2, 4. It's progress.
It's it's scary though, because it's not none of them are 1.5.
It's we're going to get there. To collectively, we'll try and get to 1.5, but it is very challenging and it requires
I,
extensive initiatives.
yeah, I did a whole bunch and only got to 1.8.
Yeah, that's still pretty good. That's still much better than our current trajectory, and that's more than three actions. Yep.
Yeah,
All
more.
right, let's see what we got here. I see we got somebody got to 2, 2, 1, 2, 4. Yeah, and that's you've made some big decisions there to get 2, 4, 2, 1. All right. Oh, Sam, sorry you can't do it, but you're gonna explore it when you get off your phone there. All right, I'm gonna look at some of the suggestions. John talked about carbon pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, how do we feel about carbon pricing? Again, are you running for office? Because you might have a different take on carbon pricing, right? But I'm going to follow John's suggestion. And here we are down at carbon price. Currently, the global average for carbon price is about $5 a ton, right? In California, we have the cap and trade. So it's market based, our price, and it's somewhere around $30. But if we go into carbon price, starting at $5 and go all the way up to very high, we just saw a big jump. But let's go into the assumptions. Well, is that high carbon price is $250 a ton of carbon. Okay. That is going to make anything carbon-based very expensive. This will add about $2 plus for each gallon of gasoline. So think about somebody trying to fill up, getting to work, anybody transportation based. This just made life very expensive in the short term, but it becomes a very effective deterrent. There's actually was a Nobel Prize in economics for somebody who modeled out the impact of a carbon price. So I don't know, 250 a ton seems pretty pricey for me. So let's take it down to maybe like around $100, which is still a big change, and we still see a pretty big impact on carbon. Let's revisit. I'm going to play this replay, right? If you go down, right, it takes us down, impacts from 3.3 to 2.8. All right, what else do we have? Let's see here.
Oh,
Yeah? What else do we want to do?
Economic growth was a good one for me too.
Economic growth. You want to slow growth?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And that's a tough sell. How much do you want to slow it?
Yeah. I went all the way.
You
If
went
it,
all the way.
I
Right.
only went down 2. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And you see, it takes us from 2.8 all the way down. We inflict all that limiting of economic growth for 0.2 degrees Celsius. That can be an option. All right. Obviously some consequences though, right? In terms of the impacts of the organizations, corporations, government taxation, slowing economic growth has some serious ramifications, right? Okay. Joy says transport. She's going to electrify transportation. So let's add this one to the equation. Oh, wait a minute. Why didn't that do anything? Right. Because electrification of transportation needs a subsidy of
Right.
renewables, and we need to start taxing oil,
Oh, yeah.
right? Smaller change there, right? Let's see what else we have here. Agricultural emissions. All right. Somebody had agricultural emissions. Joy again. We're going to stop eating meat, or are we going to figure out ways to capture those emissions, right? So the status quo is we don't do much. Joy says, let's figure out a way to reduce those agricultural emissions, right? We're getting closer. We're getting closer, right? Did anybody look at the technological carbon removal? You know, Microsoft has spent billions in building out these facilities in Iceland. They have a major facility. It's about $1,000 per metric ton of carbon. But this is technology. Bill Gates is a big believer in building out these carbon capture where they suck the carbon out of the air. If Microsoft's doing it, it must be right, right?
Mark Jacobson says that's a lousy idea.
Well, let's see what the model says, right? Because it's very expensive and the technology is very nascent, right? So I love that you're reading and you have these ideas. This model lets you actually test it out. So if we're currently at 2.4 and we invest in growth, how much of an impact is this carbon capture having?
Not much.
Not much for something that's very expensive. Right. So you're absolutely right. The source you had, right? So putting all of our hopes in, we're going to be able to capture this technology, not really there, right? Let's see. Tech solutions will get more cost effective over time. Absolutely. But what we'll see, let me go into the assumptions here, is that it takes time for them to scale to market. So here we are at 2026. If we start investing right now, it's really going to be closer to almost a decade before we start to see those benefits. So they will get cheaper over time, but it takes time for them to scale. All right, how are we feeling about our 2.3 solution?
so.
So we want to keep going, right? We're shooting for 1.5. Let's see. Reducing waste and leakage. Where's this coming from? Right.
landfills.
Exactly. This is our food waste and landfills. This is a lot of the methane leaks from a lot of our drilling that we know it's out there. Like some places flare it, but if we actually figure out a way to capture it, reduces those leakages.
Ah,
Let's replay what kind of a difference that made. Right? For a single action, that's pretty impactful because it hasn't been addressed anywhere else. You want to be interested in the costs? By all means, let me go further in. Joy asks a great question about the assumptions, and those are the kind of questions you should be asking. When you go into like this carbon dioxide removal, you go to the information source right here, and you scroll down, it will tell you all the sources, right? And will even give you, right, where they found this data and further information. So if you want to dig in, it's a fabulous rabbit hole. Like you can, put aside a large amount of hours. There's always more information you can dig into. So great question there.
We haven't touched buildings yet.
We haven't. Are buildings part of the solution? Right? Let's see what difference they make. So do we want to electrify first, or we want to make it efficient first?
Well, I think we want to reduce natural gas with electrification.
Great understanding of the pairing, these multi-solving solutions, right? So we want to sort of discourage people from using gas and incentivize electrification. Ooh, what kind of impact did that have?
not much.
Didn't have much, right?
It is.
We also
It,
want to make it more efficient, right?
mm,
Right. But absolutely. Now, part of this, the reason the electrification, right, is we've already taxed oil. We haven't taxed coal yet. Oh,
ah,
let's make coal very undesirable.
Coal's a big one.
Right. So we start to see that some of these actions start to be redundant, right?
Yep.
So if you've already taxed, you already have a carbon price, to then add a coal tax, you've sort of already discouraged the behavior. So adding a coal tax in addition to a carbon price,
Mhm.
you've already deterred a lot of the coal consumption, right?
interesting.
So that incremental action doesn't have the same level of impact as if it was done independently, right? But you're absolutely right. Buildings, we've got to electrify, we've got to be efficient. And transportation, anybody flown on a flight with sustainable aviation fuel recently? Some of our transportation is harder to electrify, right? So recognizing the limitations there, there's a lot of transportation that we need to make more efficient, right? Let's replay transportation efficiency.
Mm.
We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Let's see. I just remembered something. Yeah. No one built something bigger than a palm tree. I love that. All right. John got down to 1.5. John, tell us, what else did you do that we haven't done yet that gets you to 1.5?
Okay, I got there by the entire right side, the carbon dioxide removal and other sources of greenhouse gas. I maxed out all five of those.
Okay, let's do that. So this is
And then,
nature-based. We're going to do soil sequestration. We're going to plant trees. Wow.
That was close.
yeah,
Right.
and then I did carbon pricing and renewables on the energy supply. And
Right.
then energy efficiency on the buildings.
Yep.
And so you're at 1.6. If you turn down economic growth, you can get to 1.5.
Yeah, we're already down at logo growth. But how about this one? We didn't yet talk about reducing deforestation.
Yeah, I took that one all the way. I took
All
everything on
right.
that right side all the way down.
Ah, there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. So I did that. So,
There we go.
and you can actually now turn off the electrification on transport and it won't affect the 1.5.
Okay, right. If we're so efficient, look at
Yeah,
that.
I went back and started removing things to see what I could take out.
Right. And
And
that's
energy efficiency,
essentially,
even on transport, you take out.
Yeah, that's exactly what the simulator wants you to do is look at the interplay, right? Because we obviously, I mean, these are only 19 and there's a lot more potential actions out there, but nobody has the time or the resources or the capital to go after all of them. So we need to identify the optimal combination, right? There's a couple other ones I want to address though, because nobody talked about nuclear fusion, the future.
Yeah.
Right? And that's captured under this new zero carbon, this idea that the technology is still to come, right? So if we have a major breakthrough in new zero carbon energies, why didn't that have an impact? Right? And the
Because
thought process behind this assumptions, yeah, did you want to share?
no. I was go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. The thought process is if we've invested in renewables, and we've already depleted the consumption, we've already discouraged the consumption of fossil fuels, then a zero carbon is just in place of our renewables. So it's viewing
Mm.
these as interchangeable. If we are able to scale nuclear fusion, it's going to take the place of renewables. So swapping out our energy source versus being an incremental energy source. So that actually doesn't have an impact.
Mm.
Okay.
We didn't talk about population at all.
We didn't.
Doesn't seem to have much effect.
Ah, right. Well, let's see that. If we have our current population status quo, let's see what this is. This looks based on the UN forecast. We're working towards 10.2 million people in 2100. And of course, I'm sure you all know the most effective way to decrease population, right, is to educate women. So it doesn't
Yeah.
have to have some of
Yes,
the negative repercussions people get afraid of, right?
yes.
But what happens when we decrease population growth?
Not much.
So we didn't need to. We didn't, obviously educating women has a lot of other benefits. But if we have these investments in renewables and investments in efficiency and investments in carbon capture, population is not the variable. So people that tell you, well, it's just because we've got too many people on the planet, you have a model that shows there are variables that can override the influence of having that many people on the planet.
I think the issues with population are a lot more than the global warming, though.
Absolutely, right? This is certainly focused on climate solutions. There's a lot of other
Yeah,
discussions.
lots of agricultural land and
Yeah.
et cetera,
Yeah.
and air and
And
water
even
pollution. So
when you look at nature-based solutions in terms of planting, the US has a trillion tree program, right? Part of it is as you're planting more trees, you're depleting the land supply available to grow food for a growing population. So these are all interrelated. Absolutely. So how do you feel looking at this 1.5 degree scenario?
Not so great.
Why
Gonna
not
take
so
a
great?
It's a lot of things that have to be done together to
It,
get there. It's not like there's not a easy solution. They're all interlinked.
right. That is what this is such a compelling example. It shows you that we love to think there's a silver bullet. If we just do one or two things, we just get our local or our federal leaders to focus on these, but we see it is not that simple. This is truly multifaceted. But let me show you, based on we got there, what are some of the other impacts? Because I know temperature is important, but I'd like to look at some of the other impacts to see if we get to this world, right? Let's look at the impacts on air pollution. What happens to air pollution if we get to this world? Wow, look at that. Not only have we decreased the level of warming, we've dramatically improved air quality, and we know that has so many corresponding health and quality of life benefits. So that's a pretty amazing impact, right?
Could you do sea level rise on their app?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at sea level rise. So let's see if I can find where my sea level rise is. Here it is. Here's sea level rise. All right. So that's an improvement. Again, we're still warming, so we know there's some sea level rise, but hey, let's look at the map of it. Let's look at that San Diego map again.
Yeah.
Let's see how the airport's going to do. Are you guys worried about the airport? All right, it's going to load here. Oh, well, we don't want to start it. We don't need to start in Egypt. Let's go
No,
back to San Diego. Somebody's going to look at that, right? So in this current scenario, how much land is at risk in San Diego? Let me zoom in a little bit more,
Not much.
right?
much better.
Much better, right? And these are people's homes. This is our Navy infrastructure. This is our airport. These are our roads. We see a little bit down. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Actually, let me go to a larger map here. You can see, right? So we certainly still have pockets of it, but nothing compared to, let's go back to the, let's see if I can go back to the, all right, we'll have to remember what it looked like, right? So we have better air pollution. We have less sea level rise, right? What other impacts? Do you want to look at, let's look at from an economic perspective. Let's see if I can find the number of days of work, right?
Mm.
That are lost. So this is tangible financial results. The amount of labor lost from extreme heat. We have now saved money. We've gotten more productivity out of our workers because they're not hindered by extreme heat, right? So the multitude of impacts from reaching this desired temperature level, right, has ramifications across all sorts of spectrums, financial, real estate, health implications, and all of the above. Right. Any
Mm.
other impacts you want to check out? Let's see. I'm always interested in biodiversity. Oh, how about this one? How about the deaths from extreme heat? Right. So we
Wow.
saw the baseline. If we can take these actions to reach this level, look at the impact on deaths per 100,000 people per year. That's a significant difference, right? And
Okay,
then,
I have a question.
yes, of course.
If I got to 1.4 by doing everything draconian,
Okay.
but that's
Is
still
that
a
the world
lot.
you want to live in? Yeah. Okay.
That's still a lot of temperature increase.
It is.
And we're already feeling very large climate impacts from where we are now.
Yes.
Even 1.4 or 1.5 is not a real good picture.
No. And
It's comparatively better, but
yes.
absolutely not very good.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
based
what?
on our last couple of years, we are around 1.4, 1.5. This is where we currently are. So this is all these efforts to keep us to where we are now, where we know we have fires and floods and extreme heat. So absolutely, this is not the perfect scenario. This is the modeled scenario.
So what? If we're 1.5 right now, is compared to what?
Right. Based compared to the 1850 industrial beginning
Ah,
era from when we started having industrial time.
okay. That paints a different picture because I thought it was going forward from now. So 1.5 from the 1800s is really pretty good.
Yeah, it starts at 1880, but it goes up to often it's looking at like a rolling 40-year period, right? So let's
Yeah.
let's go back and let's look at the temperature. Again, it doesn't go back as far as that, but let's go back and look at impacts and let's just look at temperature change, right? So even back at the beginning of the century, right, after we'd already had a century of industrial age, we were at, a 0.8.
Mhm.
Mm.
Right. So just in this last 26 years, it only goes up to 2025, I believe. Here we go, find it here, right? So here we are, right? We're reaching 1.5 within this very short time frame when it took us almost a century to get to just the 0.7.
I think that's very important to tell people too, is that I think most people think we're at zero right now, and we're actually at 1.5 right now. So
Yeah.
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 So when we talk about 1.5 by the end of the century, you look how quickly at the beginning of the century we got to 1.5. And this tells you, look how dramatic. This says pretty much from this point on, we've got to curtail it. Like not waiting now.
Mm.
Pretty compelling. Yeah. All right. So hopefully you continue to see that you can dig in and look at the assumptions and see where you want to add more, where you want to do less, because, there's the option of doing everything to the maximum, but feasibility wise, that has implications. So this would suggest you find the minimal amount of actions you can take to reach
Yeah.
your desired output, right? Because again, we have limited resources, we got limited attention and people and financial capital, right? So I guess the question we put forth to users of the En-ROAD simulator model is, where do you feel like you can take action? I love that I heard Mark talk about your club has so many different, you've got your water group and your different groups, right? So you're already thinking about those actions, but knowing the areas that have the greatest impact, where do you see that you can feel like you can continue to amplify the impact that we need to get to these desired outcomes?
Well, I would like to see the us learn the model well enough to take it to cities and ask them to use this to influence their climate action plan decisions and actions.
That is such a thank you for saying that. That is like made my day, right? Because I don't want you to have sat here and then think this is a done deal. This is just a starting point. Like this simulator has lots of applications. And I will tell you, I've been using it for a couple years. It's so fun, and it's to work with it, right? And to sort of explore and see where can we have the impact for sure. And it's always changing, right? They're always updating the data. So there's always more to be learned. And I want to show you some resources.
Could I respond to Joe?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea, Joe, but this is a global simulator. Is it possible to adjust the simulator for a given locale?
It is not. It is a global simulator.
Yep.
Some of those maps you can show. So whether or not it's heat or
So
drought.
the argument you get is, yep, the argument you get is that, oh, yeah, if we did everything globally, we could make a big difference, but I'm not going to make a big difference in Vista or El Cajon. But
That's absolutely valid, Peter. On the other hand, Burlington, Vermont, who Abby is talking about resources. One of the resources here is in underneath here someplace is the research or the implementation done by Burlington, Vermont, where they said, let's apply this to our city and ask the question, it's the best we could do. What would happen if everybody did things like we're doing it,
right.
right?
Yep.
And hopefully the takeaway from the simulator is we need all of it, all of the above, right? In terms of we need all of our nations, all of our cities, certainly there's a personal level, but we all know that the actual impact comes when we magnify that. So there's no space for somebody to be like, I'm going to opt out as a city or as a state or as a country. So hopefully the simulation kind of shows the extent of efforts we need. And that is one of the reasons the simulator was developed and why it is free, is so that people like you can become more familiar with it and take it forward into your organizations, your other clubs you're a part of, your local city council. And I want to show on the Climate Interactive resource on the webpage, they have a lot more resources, right? So you can choose to participate in a self-timed or a self-monitored training where they'll go through extensive discussion behind those assumptions and the data. So a lot of the questions you asked would be addressed in this training series. You can either do it independently or they have a online cohort you can sign up with, right? And you too can start leading these sessions, right? Sometimes it's just a few people around a dinner table. Sometimes you throw it into conversation so people aren't expecting it. But the goal here is to have as many people understand these resources and the complexity of solutions and to take them out there into a broader audience. So I encourage you to consider becoming more familiar with these simulators. If you follow their online training, you can become an ambassador, which is then you join, there's about 800 of us around the world who people contact, just like Mark did, and you can be somebody who leads these seminars going forward.
How long does it take to become like an ambassador?
So there's a self-paced one. I think they suggest doing it about 3 to 4 hours a week over about 8 weeks. So somewhere between 30 and 40 hours, but it's self-paced and you can choose to whenever you want to invest that time. I know people who've done it powered through it in a week. So, but it's a really, I have to say for all the years I teach sustainability at USD and I'm on lots of panels and I've looked at lots of resources. I find this to be the most effective tool and training to understand the complexity of climate. I've read a lot of books, attended a lot of seminars, but to me, this is the creme de la creme about helping people understand what actions we need to take.
Yeah, and I believe once you've completed the training, you need to facilitate two presentations like this to be approved as an ambassador.
Right. But there's a really low bar there. So that could be
Yeah.
having your neighbors over, but they want you to practice this so you continue to be familiar with because it's constantly evolving. But yes, once you can go through the training and not be an ambassador. You can go through the training for your own knowledge. But if you become ambassador, they do, in order to be listed on their ambassador, they ask you to host 2 events a year. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about because we talked about the personal, like what can we do to contribute? And for example, I'm not in a position where I would, tax oil, but I can drive an EV. But as you demonstrated, the simulator does not honor if I'm taking that action to drive an EV rather than a gas car. So I almost feel like this is a little bit of a gap of the simulator. It looks at the global impact, but it doesn't look at your individual footprint, right?
Correct. It does. That's not the role it's trying to fill.
Yeah.
There are a lot of individual ecological footprint calculators that can tell you produce 10 metric tons. And this is meant to sort of speak to more policymakers. So
Yeah.
they want you to bring this to your council, to your state representatives, because I know this is the crowd, this is the choir, right? We're already taking all those individual actions. So it's about making it applicable on a broader scale. So this isn't correct, Stefan. It's not an individual. It's on a policy level and at any stage that can impact policy.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I think the singularly most powerful thing that it illustrated for me is that there really is no substitute for carbon pricing.
Yeah.
Like there just is no other path unless we start taxing carbon at a higher rate. Maybe not the most we could, but certainly more than we are now.
And carbon pricing, I mean, that's such a great point. Carbon pricing is not unheard of. About a quarter of the world, about a quarter of our emissions globally have some kind of carbon price.
Mm.
So it's in use, and some of them range between $5 and $100. And this scenario we had where we maxed it out at $250 is not a realistic carbon price given the impacts it has on people's quality of life. But there is no model that works without a carbon price. The single most important deterrent from using fossil fuel is indeed a carbon price. So that's a
So
very relevant takeaway.
let me make a comment about that, if I may. Uh, a lot of these, you describe them as redundant. In multivariate analysis, we talk about multicollinearity, which is how predictors are correlated such you don't count for independent variance by adding predictors. So the carbon price is a huge one, but if you do a bunch of other things, such as get rid of natural gas and get rid of coal and get rid of oil, you accomplish much the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
It's a different way of deterring fossil fuels use. So either you tax the actual when the production of carbon or you tax it at the actual where the fuel is sourced. So it is trying to accomplish the same thing, just in a different mechanism.
Right.
Is there a built-in assumption that with higher taxes, the consumption is gonna drop? Because I'm not seeing that in the model directly, because even if I tax oil and coal, the energy consumption is still high, and unless I take other steps to reduce my energy consumption, it's not going to change the outcome.
So that's an excellent question. It is built into the model, and when you tax it, right, it does eventually lead to a decrease in consumption,
Yeah,
but overall energy demand is offset now by renewables.
yeah.
So again, the simulator is based on our current trajectory where we know energy demand is increasing. So the efficiency piece might moderate some of that demand, but it's assuming the model of continued. To be honest, the model hasn't even taken into account the extent of AI impacts, right? Which would only
Hmm.
further escalate the energy demand. So that's the next update coming.
Uh, I have a question for you. I know that I did some research on Joe did about Burlington or Vermont, but are there other cities that have taken this model and tried to use it to help their plans for the future that we know of? Are any other municipalities that are embracing this to help drive policy?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know that off the top of my head. I do know they give you some case studies on their website, and it's been used at not only the local level, but there are some, like some of the federal and national Senate committees have also been given this model. But that's a good question about whether other cities have actually found this to be effective in convincing policy change. Great
Got it.
question.
Okay. And if we were to uh, train some ambassadors to go to these municipalities based on what they're doing, um, going through the training, how long before, well, I mean, the training only gives you so much. You're not going to be comfortable because if we walk into the sustainability department at the city of San Diego and we're kind of fumbling through this, they're going to think we're chuckleheads. So, yeah. Um, what do you, how long do you think it'd take to get like somebody that's up to speed? It's hard because we're a volunteer organization. You know, people don't stay around forever, and staff may move on. So,
Yeah.
how long does that, in your opinion, how long did it take you to get proficient?
So the ambassador training is I found it fascinating. Like it goes into such great detail. And that is the one that's modeled out to be about 30, 40 hours. If you go through the ambassador training, you're very well prepared to do that. It's been about
Okay.
4 or 5 years since I did the ambassador training. I was one of the first ambassadors, so I've used the tool now in my courses, but again, there's no right answer. There's no you have it wrong. It's about working together. Like you'd have whoever your audience is, have them play with the sliders. If you're doing it next to somebody, have them say, "Oh yeah, we're going to electrify," and they see the impact is minimal and done independently. So, if anybody invests the time, I know 30 hours does seem like a lot, but if you invest the time to become an ambassador, I think you'd be very competent to speak to municipalities.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
question about is this, I don't recall, is the social cost of carbon introduced here anywhere? Because, I think right now the folks in Washington have it under $20 a ton, and one report last year said it should be about 1,056.
Right.
Uh,
There's even talk
how,
of that even getting rid of the social cost of carbon in its entirety. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
So how does that factor in?
yeah, I'm going to go back and look at the assumptions. I don't believe it is included. I think they're purely looking at this from in terms of the climate impact. So that's a whole nother, again, this is so narrowly climate focused because that's
Mhm.
what we're trying to derive action. But certainly the social cost of carbon would be incremental, right? So if you look at like a $5 cost, that's certainly nothing's priced into that,
It's
right?
irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I
Okay.
guess.
So one of the features that I've been playing with this evening is a setting called temperature change by location.
Mhm.
And what you can see is the temperature changes are not globally uh, monomorphic. They're very different. For instance, if you go to the South Pacific, a 1.8 increase globally is only zero point 0.8 down there. But if you go to the Arctic of North America, it's 4.1. Now
Wow.
that's very illuminating because it gives us some hope for Antarctica. but it gives us little hope for Alaska and Greenland.
Right.
Because the northern hemisphere, according to this simulation, is heating disproportionately, even at relatively low increases in temperature.
Right.
It's actually
Absolutely
happening that
right.
way.
Say what, Joe?
It's actually happening that way, Peter.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. I tell people it's like leaving your refrigerator, your freezer door open. The room doesn't change temperature very much. It might even decrease, but all your ice melts.
Right. And this
Yeah.
is why there's such an interest in Greenland. So even the biggest climate deniers are recognizing the value, the economic value of trade routes. So absolutely, this isn't a forecast. This is a simulation based on policies to date. And this
Mhm.
is, it can still be changed. That's why it's not a forecast. But this is the trend, the trajectory we're working towards. And you're right, the North Arctic is disproportionately impacted.
Yeah. When do you expect the model to really reflect the gains in uh, AI, and when is that supposed to be out? Because that's obviously the power centers that are. I mean, they're talking about building the largest one in the United States right here in Imperial County. So,
Right. Yeah.
um, um, when is it? When do you think that's going to come out?
So there's
Eh,
been a lot of asking for it. Again, the simulator uses the data sources from like the International Energy Association, a lot
I
of the
got it.
global ones. So they're somewhat dependent on when these globally scientifically peer-reviewed sources can provide updated data and tracking. So, I would think AI is, probably at least a year away. So, but it is forthcoming. It's certainly the biggest question people have now on both energy demand and efficiency and a lot of the other variables.
And then to tack onto that is the attack on knowledge from the federal government, would that impact this simulator on
Yeah.
There's some NOAA data in there. There's some NASA data in there. Currently, those data sources are still functioning, but that's
wow.
TBD. Yeah. So there are, again, they're able to, they use a lot of these data sources to corroborate each other. So for multiple data points. So in the absence of updated NOAA or NASA data, they would have other global sources, but it certainly would, that would be a detriment to the validity.
Okay.
When you get down into the bowels of some of these reports, there's several different approaches or different ranges of results, and they actually identify which research papers
Mhm.
they're using, and you can choose between them.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's ranges of results depending on which science group you believe or want to pursue or compare.
Of course you knew that, Joe. You did the research on it.
Well, I mean, I've taken the course that Abby is referring to.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Joe.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm messing with you.
And that's what they put forth, this whole idea of transparency. It's not just trust us, this is the data. They show you the sources and the papers and who reviewed it and where the data came from and allow you to tweak the assumptions. So if you don't like the assumption of a whatever percentage subsidies impact, you can tweak it based on whatever sources you want. So the amount of flexibility does help.
So if you were to, now that we've kind of gone through this, what would you suggest is the next, how do we get this out to more people? Because they can see this. What do you want us to do from Sierra Club to
Yeah.
promote this to the world?
Well, I think it's fabulous that each of you has now become familiar with the tool, right? And I would encourage you to continue to explore. It sounds like some of you have been digging in and looking at some of the data sources, because again, it's hard to speak to it if you're uncomfortable around your confidence level. So I would encourage each of you to spend more time playing around. You try the different models, you'd move the different levels, you'd play with the different assumptions, right? And look at the different impacts. Again, find a story that resonates for you so that you can be more compelling when you're talking about it. And then the call to action for people who become familiar is to take it to groups of people. Like I said, maybe it's your book club, maybe it's your beer club, whatever it is. Sort of say, hey, can I talk to you about this? and sort of starting to lay the framework about the complexity and how it's all of the above. We need so many people and so many actions to influence policy. So like what Stefan was saying, not just you drive an EV, but how can we drive policy that incentivize and encourages those behaviors?
Okay.
It's not a small ask, I get it, right?
No,
And
it's
you
great.
guys, you're doing a lot
It's
of this
good.
work already, but it's as we all know, the work is not done.
Yeah. I think all of us will take away from this is the complexity of this is not just an issue. It's a multitude of issues that we all
Mhm.
know that, but it's like it's not baked in as much as this really shows you that it's not, it is really more. We're not going to get out of this by two or three things. And like it's almost like when they're going after electric cars, it's almost ridiculous because it's like, well, that's just one thing. We need to do all these other things too. So it's a it's a it's a lot. It's a big onion with a lot of peel that we got to get through. So yeah.
But it's meant to also be hopeful, right? Hope it's meant
Yeah.
to be inspiring because our EV subsidies are gone, but that doesn't mean we stop action, right? We find
Yeah.
other areas. So it's sort of in the current environment we're in, it says we can still keep working in areas that have yet to get the attention of some of the critics.
Well, we
Yeah.
have an option to influence or possibility of influencing each jurisdiction, each city, in terms of their climate action plan. And climate action plans are, multi-action things, right? Documents and so forth. So I think influencing or working to influence the writing and implementation of climate action plans, with this tool would be profoundly valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd also would suggest looking at your different city action plans and sort of modeling out based on, are they planting trees and adding bike
Uh,
lanes? Like those are, but do those actions actually mean those cities' emissions are going to be in the right direction, right? Those are all good things, right? With lots of other co-benefits. We want trees, we want bike lanes, but are the city's climate action plans actually going to deliver the impact that we need?
we probably need to, Peter, we probably need to take one of the cities and actually, take their climate action plan and actually do this on the model and it'd
Sure.
probably be very interesting. So yeah,
I
it's a
think
good
this
point.
would be a wonderful session to have at the office.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because spoiler alert, the city climate action plan doesn't get you to 1.5.
I know. Well, they're not even doing
Shockingly.
it. Yeah, they're not even doing it, Abby. So
Right.
they're
It's
definitely not getting
it's
to 1.5.
aspirational. It's not even put into action yet. I hear you.
Lucky if
Yeah,
we can keep a city from tearing out its existing bike lanes. So
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Hence Vista. There you go.
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
We tore
Well, I'm
some
happy
out
to
in
be a
Vista.
resource for other questions going forward. Again, we're all it's all evolving and changing. So you guys all have great insights to share. Like I'm happy to share the experience I have, and be a resource going forward. But you guys, have a lot of the insights already.
thank you very much.
Abby, thank you so much. This was enlightening.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Abby,
it's a great tool.
And there's
you
a
are awesome.
bazillion permutations you can do on this thing. I mean, it
Yep.
boggles the mind.
I know.
You can
I warned
change,
you, it can be a rabbit hole.
yeah, you can change 100 permutations times 100
Yep.
permutations.
Yep.
I do want to say, Abby, thank you so much. We are very happy to have you. You're kind of a good beam of light. You send a lot of positive energy, so I really appreciate that. And this was a good thing. You will always be in our Sierra Club family and here in San Diego. So thank you so much. But let's give a good big round of applause to Abby. Say thank you very much.
Well, and thank you to you guys for having the interest and participating and wanting to learn this, right? That's you're the inspiration that why we do these things is there's people out there wanting to learn. So thank you for your interest and your support.
You bet. I do want to announce while we're here, we have our next uh, Sierra Talks is Michael. Do you want to give us a update on our next Sierra Talks?
Sure. So our next Sierra Talk will be February 19th on Zoom at 6 p.m. Our speaker will be Miles Traphagen. He's the Borderlands program coordinator for the Wildlands Network in Arizona. I met him when I was at a kind of convening of different environmental activists resisting new border wall construction last year. He's a fascinating person. He's been working on species migration between Mexico and the United States since he was in college. He's been working on this stuff for decades. He's passionate. He's got incredible stories and a huge amount of data. Um, it's going to be a fascinating talk and discussion, so I hope all of you can make it.
Yay.
Thank you, Mike. All right. That's all we got for this evening. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. And
Thanks, Joe.
Abby,
Thanks, Abby.
You're
you're
welcome.
great.
Thank you. Thank you,
Take,
Peter and
Thanks,
take care,
everybody.
everybody.
Abby, Mark, Paul. Thanks.
Bye.